Chapter 1. The Papers in Recovery. I woke up to beeping. At first, that was all there was: slow, mechanical beeps slicing through a thick, colorless fog. The sound felt far away, like it was happening to someone else. My tongue was heavy. My mouth tasted like metal and cotton. When I tried to swallow, my throat burned. I blinked. The ceiling above me was white, too white, broken by fluorescent lights that hummed softly. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. Then the pain arrived, not sharp, not sudden, but deep and crushing, like my head had been hollowed out and stuffed with wet sand. Surgery. The word drifted up slowly, dragging fear with it. Brain surgery. My heart stuttered, then raced. I tried to move, but my body didn't respond the way it should have. My right hand twitched weakly. My legs felt distant, as if they belonged to someone else. Panic clawed at my chest. "Easy," a voice said. A woman leaned into my field of vision. Blue scrubs, brown eyes behind a face shield. A badge clipped to her chest. "Nurse." The rest of the name blurred when I tried to read it. "You're in recovery," she said gently. "The surgery is over. You're safe." Safe. I wanted to laugh, but my throat wouldn't cooperate. How long?" I croaked. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded older. Broken. 6 hours, she replied. "You did well. The doctor will come speak to you once you're more alert." 6 hours. My mind snagged on the number. 6 hours unconscious. 6 hours with my skull open. 6 hours where anything could have happened. "Did my wife?" I began. The nurse hesitated. It was small, barely noticeable, but it was enough. Something cold slid into my stomach. "She hasn't been back yet," the nurse said carefully. "But she did leave something for you." She stepped away, and when she came back, she was holding a manila envelope. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. Envelopes were normal. Paper was normal. None of this felt threatening yet. She held out to me. "This was marked urgent," she said. "She asked that it be given to you as soon as you woke up." My fingers shook as I took it. The envelope felt heavier than it should have, like it was filled with stones instead of paper. My name was written across the front. Not typed. Handwritten. My wife's handwriting. A chill crept up my spine. "What is it?" I asked. The nurse didn't answer. She just watched me, her expression tight, professional, but uneasy. I slid a finger under the flap. It took more effort than it should have. My hands weren't obeying me properly. Finally, the envelope tore open. The first page slid out. Bold letters at the top. "Petition for dissolution of marriage." My brain rejected it. I stared at the words, waiting for them to rearrange themselves into something that made sense. They didn't. "No," I whispered. I fumbled through the pages, each one worse than the last. Legal language. Dates. Signatures. File date. Today. My chest tightened painfully. My voice cracked. "She filed this today?" The nurse nodded once. I felt like the room tilted. "There's a note," she said softly, tapping the envelope. My hands were numb as I pulled it out. A single sheet of paper. Folded once. Her handwriting again. Familiar curves. The same hand that used to leave grocery lists on the fridge. The same hand that signed birthday cards for Mom. I unfolded it. "I can't do this anymore." My vision blurred. "I found someone who makes me happy." The words punched straight through me, clean and brutal. "I'm sorry, but I need to think about myself now." That was it. No explanation. No concern. No acknowledgement of where I was or what had just been cut out of my head. I let the paper slip from my fingers. It landed on my chest, light as a feather, heavy as a coffin lid. "I need my phone," I said. The nurse reached for the small table beside the bed and placed it in my hand. My fingers fumbled with the screen. My hands didn't work right. My brain lagged behind my intentions. Finally, I unlocked it. Her name was still there, still at the top of my recent calls. I hit dial. One ring. Straight to voicemail. Again. Straight to voicemail. My breathing grew shallow. I tried to text. "Please. I'm awake. Please come." The message sent. Then, seconds later, a small notification appeared. Message failed. "You are blocked." I stared at the screen. Blocked. While I was unconscious. While my skull was open. "No," I said again, louder this time. No, this isn't." I scrolled, desperate, and tapped another name. My daughter. My hand shook harder now. Ring. Ring. No answer. I tried again. Voicemail. I sent a text. Sweetheart, it's Dad. I'm out of surgery. Please call me. Delivered. I waited. Nothing. Minutes passed. The beeping machines filled the silence, indifferent and steady. She hasn't answered, I said, my voice hollow. The nurse stood there, helpless. She might be at school, she offered gently. I nodded, even though something inside me knew better. I lay back against the pillow, staring at the ceiling lights. My head throbbed with every heartbeat. My body felt foreign, fragile, broken, divorced. The word echoed in my mind, loud and unreal. I had gone into surgery married. I woke up disposable. I stared up at the ceiling, tears sliding silently into my ears, and one thought kept repeating over and over, louder than the machines around me. This can't be real. Chapter 2. The Man Who Couldn't Walk. The first thing I learned after brain surgery was that survival didn't mean function. I learned it when the physical therapist asked me to sit up. Slowly, she said, one hand hovering near my shoulder like I might shatter. Just swing your legs over the side of the bed. I tried. My mind sent the command clearly. I could feel the intention, sharp and precise. But my body answered with confusion. My right leg moved an inch. My left didn't move at all. Okay, she said too quickly. That's okay. We'll take our time. Sweat broke out across my back. I clenched my jaw and tried again. My leg jerked, then dropped heavily against the mattress. A tremor ran through my arm, violent and uncontrollable. What's happening? I asked, but the words came out slurred, thick like my mouth was full of glue. The therapist's smile tightened. It's normal, she said. Post-op neurological disruption. Your brain is relearning pathways. Relearning. I had forgotten how to sit up. They brought a walker the next day. A metal frame with tennis balls on the feet, squeaking softly against the floor. It looked ridiculous, something meant for someone much older, someone already halfway gone. I wrapped my fingers around it. My grip was weak, unreliable. Stand when you're ready, the nurse said. I stood, or I tried to. My knees buckled instantly. The world tilted sideways. Panic surged as I felt myself falling, weightless and helpless. Hands caught me before I hit the ground. Whoa, I've got you, someone said. My heart slammed against my ribs. My legs shook violently, as if they were made of loose wires instead of bone. I can't, I said, breathless. I can't feel. It's okay, the nurse repeated. That word again. Okay, we'll try again later. Later became tomorrow. Tomorrow became the next day. Each session followed the same pattern. Effort, shaking, failure. I learned new humiliations. How it felt to be strapped into a gait belt like a child. How it felt to need help just to stand. How it felt to speak and hear your own words betray you, dragging and stumbling, forcing strangers to lean in and guess at your meaning. Can you say your full name for me? A doctor asked. I tried. The syllables tangled in my mouth. He nodded, scribbling something down, pretending not to notice. My wife never came. Every time footsteps passed my door, my chest tightened. Every time a nurse glanced at the hallway, I lifted my head, hopeful despite myself. Nothing. I asked once, has anyone come to see me? I said to a nurse changing my four. She checked the chart, then shook her head. Not yet. I nodded like it didn't matter. I stopped asking after that. My daughter didn't come either. I called her once, hands shaking as I held the phone. It rang until voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I didn't know how to explain myself when I couldn't even pronounce her name properly. Rehab blurred together into a slow-motion nightmare. Walk, fall, apologize, repeat. Once my legs gave out halfway down the hall. I went down hard, my shoulder slamming into the floor. The sound echoed, loud and ugly. I'm sorry, I said automatically, tears burning my eyes. I'm sorry, I'm trying. The therapist knelt beside me. You don't need to apologize, she said softly. But I did. For taking up space. For being inconvenient. For existing in this broken state. One afternoon, as I lay in bed staring at the blank television screen, voices drifted in from the hallway. Two nurses stood just outside my door, unaware that the thin curtain did nothing to stop sound. Can you believe her? One whispered. Honestly, the other replied. I heard she's already with someone new. A pause. During his surgery, too. Cool. My stomach dropped. I saw her Instagram, the first nurse said, smiling. Like nothing happened. Poor guy, the other murmured. He doesn't even know. I closed my eyes. But I did know. The day they discharged me, they wheeled me to the front entrance. The automatic doors whooshed open, letting in sunlight that felt too bright, too real. A nurse checked her clipboard. Your ride should be here any minute. I looked past her, scanning the parking lot. Cars came and went. Families laughed. A woman hugged a man goodbye. Minutes passed. Then more. She cleared her throat. Is there someone we should call? I swallowed. My throat felt raw. No, I said. I'll take a taxi. The ride home was quiet. The driver didn't ask questions. I stared out the window, watching the city move on without me. When we reached my house, my heart sank. The driveway was empty. Inside, the silence was worse. Drawers were bare. Closets half empty. Photos missing from the walls. The couch pillows gone. The kitchen stripped of anything that felt like us. She hadn't just left. She had erased herself. I stood there, leaning heavily on my walker, surrounded by the echo of a life that no longer existed. And in that empty house, with no one waiting and no one coming back, I finally understood the truth I'd been avoiding. Recovery wasn't going to happen with anyone holding my hand. I was going to have to do this alone. Chapter 3, 4 months of silence. Time didn't move forward after I got home. It sank. Days piled up on each other like dirty dishes in the sink, indistinguishable, heavy, and ignored until the smell became impossible to escape. Morning light came through the windows whether I wanted it or not, cutting across the empty rooms and reminding me that I was still here. Alive. Technically. The walker became my shadow. I learned the geography of my house inch by inch, the stretch of wall I could brace against, the counter edge that dug into my palm when my legs trembled, the exact distance between the couch and the bathroom that felt like a mile on bad days. Cooking was a negotiation with gravity. I burned meals because my hands shook, dropped plates because my grip failed. Once, I sat on the kitchen floor for nearly an hour, staring at a spilled pot of soup, unable to stand back up without help. A laugh then, short and sharp, because crying took too much energy. Showering felt like a battle I had to psych myself up for. I talked out loud to my body like it was a stubborn animal. Okay, I'd whisper. Just stand. Just 5 minutes. Sometimes I won. Sometimes I didn't. The mail came every afternoon at exactly 2:17 p.m. I knew because I watched for it, the way prisoners watch for guards. At first, I hoped for something human, a card, a message, proof that I still existed to someone else. Instead, there were envelopes. White ones. Thick ones. Medical bills with numbers that made my chest tighten. Legal letters written in language designed to feel final and merciless. Notices stamped with dates I didn't remember agreeing to. The divorce was finalized without me. I sat at the dining table, paperwork spread out like evidence, reading that my marriage had officially ended while I was learning how to stand without falling over. Signatures stared back at me. Hers. A judge's. Not mine. I tried to call the law office listed on the documents. I was incapacitated, I said when a receptionist finally answered. I didn't know about these dates. There was a pause. Keyboard clicking. I'm sorry, she said, her voice flat with routine. Everything was processed correctly. Click. I stared at the phone long after the call ended. I tried my daughter again. At first, I kept the messages light. Hey kiddo. Just checking in. I love you. Delivered. Read. No reply. A week later. I'm doing therapy. I walked today without falling. I wish you were here. Read. Still nothing. Then one afternoon, my message didn't go through at all. You can no longer send messages to this user. Blocked. The word hit harder than the tremors ever had. Blocked by my own child. That night, I broke and opened social media. I hadn't wanted to. I knew better. But loneliness makes terrible decisions feel necessary. Her profile was still there. My wife, ex-wife now, smiling on a beach I didn't recognize. Her hair looked lighter, healthier. There were pictures of wine glasses, sunsets, hotel balconies. In every photo, there was an arm just out of frame, a reflection in a window, A man's shoes at the edge of shot. Someone better. I scrolled until my hands went numb. She needed a strong partner. I muttered to the empty room. That's all. I replayed moments from before the surgery, looking for clues. Every sigh, every delayed reply. Every night, she turned away in bed. I blamed the tumor, the fatigue, the weakness. I blamed myself. I had become something inconvenient, a burden, a before and after story she didn't want to finish. Weeks blurred into months. 4 of them, though it felt like a lifetime. The house grew quieter as I did. I stopped turning on the television, stopped cooking anything that took effort. Cereal for dinner became normal. Sometimes nothing at all. One night, I sat at the kitchen table with a bottle of pills in front of me. Pain medication. Prescribed. Legal. Ordinary. They looked small. Harmless. I lined them up without really thinking about it. Just wanted to see how many there were. Just wanted to feel in control of something. My hands shook as I stared at them. What's the point? I whispered. No one answered. I thought about the hospital ceiling, the divorce papers, the blocked messages, the silence that followed everything I did. I imagined the house finally empty of me, the way it already felt empty of life. My chest hurt, not physically, but deep, like something was collapsing inward. I reached for the bottle. Then a memory surfaced, uninvited. My daughter, at 6 years old, standing on a playground ladder, frozen halfway up. Her small hands gripping the metal rails, knuckles white. I can't, she cried. I'd crouched below her, arms outstretched. You don't have to go higher, I'd said. Just don't look down. Look at me. She had. See? I told her. I've got you. I dropped my hand back to the table. The pills blurred as tears finally came, hot and unstoppable. I pressed my forehead against the cool wood and breathed like I'd been taught in rehab, slow, counted breaths in and out. I'm still here, I whispered. I'm still here. The bottle stayed closed. When morning light crept in through the blinds, I was still sitting there, exhausted, hollow, alive. I had survived the night. Barely. Chapter 4, The Doorbell. The doorbell rang at 9:12 a.m. I knew the time because I was staring at the microwave clock when the sound cut through the house. Sharp, sudden, impossible. No one ever rang my doorbell anymore. Bills came in the mail. Groceries came in bags left on the porch by strangers who never knocked. People didn't visit. For a moment, I wondered if I'd imagined it. Then it rang again. I froze. One hand braced against the kitchen counter, my walker angled awkwardly beside me. My heart began to pound, not with hope, but with fear. Unexpected things had stopped being good things a long time ago. Coming, I called out, my voice rough from disuse. It took me longer than it should have. Each step was careful, deliberate. By the time I reached the front door, I was already exhausted. When I opened it, 2 strangers stood on my porch. An older man and woman, late 60s maybe. They were dressed neatly but plainly, the kind of clothes people wore when they didn't want to draw attention. The woman clutched her purse with both hands. The man held a folded folder under his arm like it weighed too much. They both looked uneasy. I'm sorry, the man said immediately. Are you Mark? I nodded. Yes. The woman inhaled sharply, like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. I'm Evelyn, she said. This is my husband, Thomas. I waited. Neither of them smiled. Neither of them made small talk. They stood there as if stepping onto my porch had cost them something. We know this is inappropriate, Thomas said carefully, but we were hoping we could speak with you, just for a few minutes. About what? I almost asked, almost shut the door, almost told them they had the wrong house. Then Evelyn said it. Our son is the man your wife left you for. The world narrowed. I gripped the doorframe as dizziness washed over me. You what? She nodded, eyes already wet. We only learned who you were yesterday. We didn't know. Her voice cracked. We didn't know what he did to you. Silence stretched between us. Heavy. Suffocating. I don't think this is appropriate, I said finally. You should leave. Thomas lifted his hands. Please. Just please hear us out. We won't take long. I looked at them again. Really looked. They weren't smug. They weren't defensive. They looked like people who hadn't slept. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. 5 minutes, I said. They entered quietly, as if afraid to disturb the air. Their eyes moved around the living room, the half-empty shelves, the bare walls, the walker by the couch. Evelyn swallowed. "You were sick," she said softly. "Weren't you?" I didn't answer. "We didn't know," Thomas repeated. "Our son told us you and your wife were separated, that the marriage was already over." I laughed then. A short, bitter sound. "That's convenient." They exchanged a glance. "Our son has a pattern," Evelyn said, her voice shaking now. "He targets women during transitions. Divorce, illness, grief. He presents himself as stability." My stomach tightened. "We've spent years cleaning up after him," Thomas added. "Paying debts. Apologizing to people we never should have had to meet." Evelyn reached in her purse and pulled out her phone. Her hands trembled as she unlocked it. "We found out about your surgery by accident," she said. "He let it slip during an argument. We asked questions. He got angry." She looked up at me. "That's when we started digging." Thomas finally unfolded the folder. Papers spilled out onto the coffee table, printouts, timelines, highlighted messages. "Fraud charges," he said quietly. "Civil suits. Restraining orders. Women who never reported because they were embarrassed." I stared at the documents, my pulse roaring in my ears. "This can't be real," I whispered. Evelyn nodded. "That's what every woman says at first." She handed me her phone. On the screen were screenshots, messages between my wife and their son. Dates jumped out at me. Weeks before my surgery. Promises. Plans. One message made my chest seize. "He'll be out of the picture soon. Don't worry." I dropped the phone. "I was unconscious," I said, my voice barely audible. "I had brain surgery." Evelyn's face crumpled. "We didn't know. If we had," Thomas cut in gently. "He encouraged her to finalize the divorce while you were incapacitated. Told her it was cleaner. The room felt too small. Too tight. They didn't abandon you because you were weak," Thomas said, his voice firm now. "You were targeted. Both of you." I sank into the chair, legs trembling. For the first time in months, something inside me shifted. Not relief, not joy, but clarity. Cold and sharp. I hadn't failed. I had been prey. Evelyn reached across the table, but stopped short of touching me. "There's more," she said quietly. "A lot more." I looked up at her, heart pounding. "There's more you need to know." Chapter 5. The Truth Behind the Divorce. They stayed longer than 5 minutes. I didn't ask them to leave. I didn't offer coffee. I just sat there while Thomas spread papers across my coffee table like a crime scene. Each page a small detonation. "This is the timeline," he said, tapping a printed calendar. We pieced it together from messages, bank statements, and things he forgot to delete. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, every muscle tight. "Start from the beginning." Evelyn took a breath. "It started before your surgery. Months before." She slid a page toward me, screenshots of messages, dates stamped neatly at the top. I recognized my wife's writing immediately. The casual tone, the jokes, the way she used ellipses when she didn't want to say something outright. "I'm tired of being the strong one. I feel invisible. I don't think I can do this anymore." The dates made my stomach twist. These were from a time when I still thought we were okay. When I was exhausted but hopeful. When I believed we were facing my diagnosis together. "She was already gone," I said quietly. Thomas nodded. "Emotionally, yes. He encouraged that. He framed himself as the escape." I flipped to the next page. A message from him. "You deserve happiness. You don't owe anyone your life." I laughed bitterly. "That sounds noble." "It does," Evelyn said. "That's how he works." Another page. A longer exchange. "You can't wait forever. Illness changes people. You shouldn't sacrifice your future." I felt heat rise in my chest. "I was having seizures," I said. "I was scared all the time." Evelyn's eyes filled again. "He knows how to find the cracks." Thomas leaned back, rubbing his temples. "The shift happened right before your surgery date. You pushed hard then." I scanned the timeline. Messages intensified. Calls late at night. Deleted threads reconstructed from backups. Then I saw it. A message sent the morning of my surgery. "This is your window. Do it while he can't interfere." My hands began to shake. "He told her to file while I was unconscious," I said. "Yes," Thomas replied. "He said it would prevent drama." I closed my eyes. Images flooded back. Hospital lights, the weightless fog before anesthesia, my wife squeezing my hand and saying she'd be there when I woke up. She kissed me. I whispered. Right before they took me in, Evelyn reached for a tissue and pressed it into her palm. I'm so sorry. I pushed on, afraid to stop. What about the money? Thomas slid over bank statements. Red lines circled transfers I didn't recognize. Joint accounts, he said. Large withdrawals over a short period. He coached her on what to move and when. I stared at the numbers. Savings I thought were safe. Emergency funds meant for rehab, for treatment, for us. She said it was for household expenses. I muttered. She moved most of it within 3 weeks, Thomas said, before you were fully coherent. Another document, an account opened in my wife's name alone. Another transfer. She drained me, I said flatly. Yes. My chest felt hollow now, anger burning clean and bright where despair used to sit. And my daughter? I asked. What did they tell her? Evelyn hesitated. We don't have direct messages between them, but we spoke to one of the women he was involved with before. He uses the same script. Thomas added he isolates, rewrites the story. I nodded slowly. She stopped answering my calls. Blocked me. Evelyn's voice was gentle. Your wife told her you gave up, that you didn't want to fight anymore, that you chose to be sick instead of being present. I felt like I'd been punched. I would have died for her, I said hoarsely. I was fighting to live. I know, Evelyn whispered. I stood up, pacing despite the protest in my legs. Each step sent a jolt of pain through me, but I welcomed it. Pain meant I was still connected to my body, not floating above it. So let me get this straight, I said. She checked out emotionally. He swooped in. He pushed her to file while I was incapacitated. He helped her move money, and they fed my daughter lies to keep me isolated. Thomas nodded. That's the picture. I stopped pacing and faced them. This wasn't an impulsive divorce. No, Thomas said. It was strategic. The word landed hard, but it fit. Clean. Precise. For months, I had replayed everything, asking myself where I failed, where I became unlovable, where I deserved to be left behind. Now, the shape of the truth stood in front of me, undeniable. I hadn't been abandoned in a moment of weakness. I had been removed. I sank back into the chair, breath steadying for the first time in a long while. Why are you telling me this? Evelyn met my eyes. Because we're done protecting him. Thomas added, and because you deserve the truth. I looked down at the documents, at the proof spread across my table. My life hadn't imploded randomly. It had been dismantled, piece by piece. I gathered the papers into a neat stack, my hand steady now. Thank you, I said. Evelyn nodded, tears slipping free. What you do with this, that's up to you. After they left, the house felt different. Still quiet. Still mostly empty, but not hollow. I sat alone with the truth, letting it settle. Anger simmered, controlled and sharp. Not the wild kind that destroys everything it touches, but the kind that forges something stronger. I wasn't done. I picked up my phone, opened a new note, and began to write. I was done staying silent. Chapter 6, Learning to Stand Again. Progress didn't announce itself. It crept in quietly, almost apologetically, like it wasn't sure it was welcome. The first time I noticed it, I was halfway down the rehab hallway before I realized my hand weren't squeezing the walker as tightly as usual. My grip had loosened. My shoulders weren't hunched up around my ears. I was breathing without having to remind myself how. Good, my physical therapist said, watching me closely. You're not fighting your body today. I took another step, then another. I'm tired, I said. She smiled. That means you're using the right muscles. I hated that she was right. Rehab still hurt. My legs still trembled when I pushed too far. My speech still lagged when I was frustrated or overwhelmed. But the falls became fewer, the shaking less violent. I stopped apologizing every time my knees buckled. One afternoon, I stood up from the chair without using my arms. The room went silent. My therapist blinked. Did you realize you just did that? I looked down at my legs, then back at her. My heart began to race. I didn't think about it, I said. She nodded slowly. Exactly. That word followed me home. Exactly. I started thinking less about what I'd lost and more about what I could still build. The documents from Thomas and Evelyn stayed stacked neatly on my dining table. I didn't shove them into a drawer or scatter them across the house like everything else had been. I bought a folder, then another. I labeled them with a black marker. Messages. finances, timeline. Order felt good. Control felt better. I hired a lawyer the following week. This time, I didn't walk in confused or apologetic. I walked in prepared, my cane tapping softly against the tile floor. I placed the folders on her desk and watched her eyebrows lift as she flipped through the contents. "They finalized the divorce while you were incapacitated?" she asked. "Yes." "And these withdrawals?" she continued. "You didn't authorize them?" "No." She leaned back in her chair, studying me. "Why didn't you fight this sooner?" I met her gaze evenly. "Because I didn't know I was being lied to." She nodded once. "That changes things." For the first time since waking up in recovery, someone was speaking to me like I was a participant in my own life again. Outside the office, I sat in my car for a long moment before turning the key. My hands shook, not from weakness, but from something else. Relief. I started documenting everything. Every phone call, every email, every medical appointment. I wrote dates and times in a notebook I kept by the bed. I stopped trusting my memory and started trusting paper. When my ex-wife's name appeared on a bank statement, I circled it. When a charge didn't make sense, I highlighted it. I stopped letting things blur together. Truth like clarity. One evening, my phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in years. "Mark?" a familiar voice said. "Yeah, it's Daniel. From work." I heard things. I hesitated. "What kind of things?" "That you disappeared. That you checked out. That you left your family behind." I exhaled slowly. "That's not what happened." "I didn't think so," he said. "You don't seem like the type." We met for coffee a few days later. I walked in with my cane and didn't bother explaining it. He didn't ask. "I always figured something was off," he said, stirring his cup. "Your wife called the office once. Said you were done. It didn't sound like you." "She said that?" I asked. "Yeah, a little too rehearsed." I nodded. I was in a hospital bed. His jaw tightened. Jesus. Talking to him felt normal, grounded. He didn't pity me. He didn't rush to fill silences. He just listened. "You're not crazy," he said finally. "And you're not weak." That night, I deleted the social media apps from my phone. No dramatic gesture. No speeches to myself. Just a quiet decision. I didn't need to watch her smile anymore. I didn't need to analyze shadows at the edge of photos or imagine laughter I wasn't part of. I had spent months bleeding internally over things that were no longer mine to carry. The silence afterward was startling, and then peaceful. My days found a rhythm. Rehab in the morning, paperwork in the afternoon, short walks in the evening, the sun warm against my face. I still had bad days. Days when my legs dragged and my hands shook and my chest tightened for no clear reason. But I didn't spiral anymore. I noticed the moment it truly changed. I was standing in the kitchen, chopping vegetables slowly, carefully. My phone buzzed on the counter. A notification from an unknown number. For a split second, my heart jumped. Then it settled. I finished what I was doing before picking up the phone. The reaction surprised me more than the message itself. I wasn't bracing anymore. I wasn't flinching at every sound, every memory. I felt rooted, like my feet were finally touching the ground again. That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and studied my reflection. The scar was still there. The weight loss, the fatigue etched into my face. But my eyes were steady. "They don't get to decide who I am," I said aloud. The words didn't sound like a promise or a threat. They sounded like a fact. I gathered the folders from the table and stacked them neatly. I opened my notebook and flipped to a fresh page. At the top, I wrote one sentence. Truth doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be told. I closed the notebook, turned off the light, and sat back down, calm, focused, ready. I was done reacting. I was ready to confront the lies. Chapter 7, The Daughter. I didn't write the letter in one sitting. I tried the first night and failed. My hands hovered over the keyboard, fingers trembling, my chest tight with the weight of everything I wanted to say and everything I was afraid to say wrong. One careless sentence could sound like blame. One emotional plea could feel like manipulation. And I couldn't afford either. So I closed the laptop and waited. The next morning, I opened it again and started with facts. Not excuses. Not apologies. Facts. I was admitted on March 3rd. Surgery began at 8:41 a.m. I was unconscious for 6 hours. I wrote slowly, carefully, stopping whenever my vision blurred. I explained the tremors, the speech therapy, the walker, the falls. I didn't dramatize them. I didn't soften them either. I wanted to call you. I tried. I attached copies of hospital discharge papers, rehab schedules, photos I'd taken on days when standing felt like a victory, me gripping parallel bars, my legs shaking, my smile thin but real. I deleted entire paragraphs that sounded defensive. I rewrote sentences that sounded like accusations. Over and over, I reminded myself, this isn't a trial. This is a bridge. The hardest part came last. I never chose to leave you. I stared at that sentence for a long time before adding the next. If you were told otherwise, I need you to know that it wasn't true. No blame. Just truth. When I finally hit send, my hands were numb. I sat back in the chair, heart pounding, waiting for the familiar sting of rejection. Nothing happened. No reply. No read receipt. No notification. Days passed. Then a week. Then another. I checked my email once in the morning, once at night, and forced myself to stop. I didn't want to become that man again, the one refreshing screens, measuring his worth in silence. Still, every knock from a neighbor's door, every car slowing outside, made my heart jump. 3 weeks later, there was a knock at my door. It was late, nearly 10. The house was quiet, lights low. For a moment, I didn't move. I stood frozen in the hallway, my cane heavy in my hand, listening. The knock came again, firmer this time. I swallowed and moved toward the door, each step deliberate. When I opened it, the porch light spilled over a familiar face. My daughter stood there, shoulders hunched, eyes red and glossy. She looked thinner, older, like someone who'd been carrying something too heavy for too long. For a second, neither of us spoke. "Hi, Dad," she said finally, her voice shaking. I couldn't answer. My throat closed completely. She looked past me into the house, then back at my face. Her eyes dropped to the cane, to the scar near my hairline. You really were sick," she whispered. I stepped aside. "Do you want to come in?" She nodded. We sat across from each other in the living room, the space between us filled with all the words we hadn't said in months. She wrung her hands together, twisting her fingers until her knuckles turned white. "I read everything," she said. "The letter, the documents, the pictures." I nodded. I didn't know how else to explain. She let out a shaky breath. "Mom told me you stopped trying, that you didn't want us anymore, that you were tired of being a husband, a father." The words hit, even though I'd expected them. "I was fighting to live," I said quietly. Her face crumpled. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. She said you wouldn't answer her calls, that you were pushing everyone away." I felt something crack open in my chest, not anger, not relief, but grief. Raw and deep. "I couldn't talk," I said. Sometimes I couldn't even remember words. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I blocked you because I thought you didn't care." "I cared every second," I said. My voice broke, and I didn't stop it this time. Even when I couldn't stand. Even when I couldn't speak. I cared. She covered her mouth with her hand, sobbing quietly. "I hate myself for believing it," she said. "For not coming to see you." I shook my head. "You were lied to. That matters." She looked up at me then, eyes fierce through the tears. "But I should have asked questions." "Maybe," I said gently. "But you were protecting yourself." "I get that." Silence fell again, different this time. Less sharp, less deadly. She stood suddenly and crossed the room, wrapping her arms around me with a force that stole my breath. I froze for a split second, then hugged her back, careful and desperate all at once. "I thought I lost you," she whispered into my shoulder. "I'm still here," I said. "I've always been." We pulled apart slowly. She wiped her eyes, embarrassed, then looked at me with something like fear. "I don't know what to believe anymore," she admitted. "Everything feels upside down." "That's okay," I said. "You don't have to decide anything tonight." She nodded, breathing deeply, grounding herself. "I don't forgive everything," she said. "Not yet. And I'm still angry. At both of you." "That's fair," I replied. "I'm not asking for forgiveness." She studied my face for a long moment, then spoke softly. "I just need to understand. All of it. From you." My heart thudded once, heavy and hopeful. She straightened her shoulders. "I don't know where this leads," she said. "But I'll listen." Chapter 8: Exposure. The conference room smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee. I sat at the far end of the table, hands folded, posture steady. 6 months ago, I would have been shaking, either from weakness or rage. Now I was still, present. My lawyer sat to my left, calm and surgical, a yellow legal pad open in front of her like a weapon she didn't need to raise. Across from us, my ex-wife shifted in her chair. She looked put together, hair neat, makeup precise, but her eyes kept flicking to the door as if she were waiting for someone to rescue her. He wasn't coming. "Let's begin," my lawyer said, voice level. "We'll start with the financial discrepancies." She slid a stack of documents across the table. Bank statements, transfer records, time-stamped authorizations. My ex-wife glanced at them, then away. "I don't see how this is relevant," she said tightly. "It's relevant," my lawyer replied, "because these withdrawals occurred while my client was medically incapacitated. He could not authorize them. They were joint accounts," my ex-wife snapped. "Joint," my lawyer agreed. "Not unilateral." Silence settled like dust. The mediator cleared his throat. "Mrs. Hale, can you explain why over 60% of shared assets were transferred into accounts solely under your name during this period?" My ex-wife opened her mouth, then closed it. "I was advised," she said finally. "I was protecting myself." "By draining accounts earmarked for post-operative care?" my lawyer asked. Her jaw tightened. "I didn't know he'd need that much." I watched her then, not with anger, but with distance. She wasn't cruel in this moment. She was cornered, and there was a difference. "Let's move on," the mediator said. "There's also concern about third-party influence." That got her attention. My lawyer didn't look at me when she spoke next. "We have reason to believe your partner was directing financial decisions." "That's ridiculous," my ex-wife said. "He had nothing to do with this." The door opened. Everyone turned. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside, followed by a woman in a gray blazer holding a thick file. She didn't look at me. She looked straight at my ex-wife. "Ma'am," the woman said, "we need to inform you that your partner is currently under investigation for multiple counts of fraud and financial coercion." My ex-wife's face drained of color. "What?" she whispered. The woman continued, unfazed. "We've received corroborating statements from multiple individuals. Your name appears in several financial records we're reviewing." The room was utterly silent. "He told me he was past that," my ex-wife said, voice shaking. "He said it was years ago." "So did the others," the woman replied. The officers left as quietly as they'd come, but the damage stayed behind. Later that week, the fallout spread. His parents released a statement distancing themselves from their son. Accounts froze. Charges were filed. Women began coming forward, some publicly, others quietly through lawyers and affidavits. Patterns emerged. Timelines overlapped. It wasn't chaos. It was clarity. The divorce settlement was reopened. Not erased. Not reversed. Revisited. My lawyer walked me through the revised terms line by line. Partial asset restoration. Medical expenses reimbursed. Penalties applied where they belonged. "This is fair," she said. "Not total, but just." I signed without shaking. The story didn't explode the way people expect justice to. There were no viral videos, no dramatic press conference, but the cracks showed. Friends stopped congratulating her online. Invitations dried up. Whispers replaced applause. The perfect narrative she'd built, brave woman choosing happiness, now had footnotes. Context. Doubt. I didn't comment. Didn't post. Didn't correct strangers. Truth has a way of traveling on its own. One night, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Can we talk?" The message read. I stared at it for a long moment, then set the phone face down on the table. I wasn't ready. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to humiliate her or watch her fall apart. I wanted something quieter, something harder. I wanted accountability. The next morning, I stood outside the courthouse, cane in hand, sun warming my face. Reporters clustered near the steps, microphones raised, hungry for spectacle. A woman called out, "Do you feel vindicated?" I paused. "I feel clear," I said. "That's enough." Inside, my lawyer packed her bag. "This is the end of the legal part," she said. "The rest is personal." I nodded. As I left the building, I felt it, an approaching weight. Not fear, not dread, anticipation. There was one conversation left, one truth that hadn't been spoken face to face. And it was getting closer. Chapter 9, the last conversation. The cafe smelled of roasted coffee and old wood, but it didn't matter. The aroma couldn't reach past the tension hanging between us. I spotted her first, sitting at a corner table, hands wrapped around a mug like it might shield her. Her hair was pulled back neatly, a few strands loose at the temples, softening the sharpness in her face. I paused at the entrance, letting my eyes take her in. My cane rested against my chair, but I didn't need it for this moment. I could stand, walk, and face her. She noticed me then, eyes widening just slightly. That subtle recognition told me she knew exactly why I had agreed to this meeting. Not confrontation, not revenge, but truth. I approached, careful with each step, my heart calm for the first time in years. "Mark," she said, voice cautious, almost fragile. I nodded. "Hi, Susan." She gestured to the seat across from her. I sat slowly, deliberately. The chair creaked under my weight, but I didn't flinch. For a long moment, we didn't speak, just stared. I could see the tension coiling in her shoulders, the way her fingers flexed around the cup. Finally, she spoke. I don't know what you want from me." I took a deep breath. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here to make sure you understand, fully, what happened." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "I already know why you're angry." "No," I said gently. "You don't. Not yet." I reached into my bag and pulled out a small folder. Nothing confrontational, just facts. Bank statements, timelines, screenshots. I slid it across the table. "This is what your timing did to me." Her eyes flicked to the papers, then back up at me. You didn't think, I said, letting the words hang. "You didn't think I'd wake up to a divorce notice in recovery. You didn't think about the months I spent alone, relearning to walk, relearning to live. You didn't think about how my daughter was fed lies. And you didn't think about me at all." She swallowed hard. "Mark," I held up a hand. "No, let me finish." Her hand froze midair over her mug. "I'm not yelling. I'm not pleading. I'm telling you what it felt like." My voice was calm, steady, each word deliberate. I woke up fragile, in pain, with my life hanging in balance. And you discarded me. Not because you stopped loving me, not because you were unhappy, but because someone else told you it was time to replace me. Her eyes glistened. A tremor ran through her jaw. I didn't realize. I echoed softly. "You didn't just leave me. You discarded me. You made a choice while I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't fight back. And I lived in that void alone. Every day, every hour, wondering if I was still human. If I mattered." She pressed her fingers to her lips, looking small and exposed, a stark contrast to the confident woman I had once known. "I know," she whispered. I didn't understand how much pain I caused." I exhaled slowly, letting the anger I had carried for months settle into something quieter, heavier, and strangely freeing. "I'm not here for apologies," I said. "I'm not here for excuses. I'm here so you understand that timing matters. Choices matter. Even small decisions can break someone. You broke me, Susan, but not permanently." Tears pooled in her eyes. She looked down at the folder on the table, then back up at me, searching my face. "I never wanted this. Not for us. Not for our daughter. I thought I was making the right choice." I shook my head gently. "You made the choice that was easy for you. That's not forgiveness. That's clarity." Silence stretched, dense and almost tangible. Then I leaned back, letting my gaze drift toward the window. Morning light fell across the cafe, catching motes of dust that danced lazily in the air. "I forgive you," I said, voice low but firm. "Not for you. Not because you deserve it, but because I can't carry this anymore. Because I choose to live, fully and freely, beyond the shadow of your decision." Her hands shook as she lowered the mug, a mixture of guilt, relief, and disbelief in her expression. I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything," I replied. "Just hear me. That's enough for now." For the first time in months, I felt unburdened. Not triumphant, not victorious, just present. The anger that had kept me awake at night, that had fueled my steps during rehab, that had simmered in every careful word of confrontation. It had softened into clarity. We sat together in silence, neither reaching for the other, neither retreating. There was space between us now, not the void that had been there for months, but a quiet, fragile equilibrium. She finally exhaled, small and trembling. Maybe someday we can start over. Not as we were, but, as people trying to make things right. I met her gaze, noting the vulnerability in her eyes. Maybe, I said, but not today. Today, I walk away knowing I've been heard. That's enough. I stood slowly, deliberately, testing the weight of my legs. The cane had stayed at the table and used. The tremor in my hands was gone, or at least controlled. My body felt steady, solid, present. She rose as well, eyes wide, hands slightly extended but hesitant. I'm sorry, she whispered. I nodded once, a simple acknowledgement. I know. I turned toward the door. Each step was deliberate, measured. Not a stumble, not a falter, not a plea for attention or validation. Just me, walking upright in control. She watched, silent, the folder still on the table. I glanced back briefly, letting her see my face. Calm, clear, free. I opened the door and stepped into the sunlight. The warmth on my face was sharp, almost startling. The sounds of the city filled my ears, the distant hum of traffic, a dog barking, a door closing somewhere down the street. Life continued beyond the walls of betrayal, beyond the shadows of grief and manipulation. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with air I hadn't fully claimed in months. I was standing, fully, on my own, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like my life truly belonged to me again. A new chapter was waiting. Chapter 10, The Man Who Survived. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, painting stripes of gold across the hardwood floor. I stretched slowly, feeling muscles that were once useless awaken with familiar stiffness. No pain today, only strength earned through months of effort, patience, and stubbornness. A year had passed since I woke to the hospital envelope that shattered my world. A year of walking, standing, learning to speak clearly again, of learning how to live in a body I once thought had betrayed me. I made my way to the kitchen, savoring the quiet. Coffee percolated in the background, the aroma rich and grounding. I poured a cup, letting the steam warm my face, and for a moment, I just stood there, sipping, watching sunlight streak across the empty room. Peace, finally, was no longer foreign. The phone buzzed. A message from my daughter. Can I come over this afternoon? I smiled softly, typing back. Of course. I'll be here. Our relationship wasn't perfect. There were no sweeping reconciliations or dramatic hugs that erased months of absence and lies. But there were glances that lingered a little longer, shared laughter over coffee, and conversations that grew deeper with each meeting. Trust, like the body, had to be rebuilt carefully. I looked around the apartment. Minimalist now, only what I needed. The excess of the past, pictures of my ex-wife, reminders of betrayal, stacks of unopened mail, gone. I kept only what mattered. My recovery journals, photos of progress in rehab, a few mementos of my daughter's childhood. By mid-morning, I was out the door, cane in used. I walked to the local rehabilitation center, where I volunteered a few times a week. My role was simple: mentor patients recovering from major surgeries, the ones teetering between despair and determination. "Good morning, Mr. Hale," called out Jenna, a young woman recovering from a knee replacement. She was struggling with her walker, frustration etching her face. "Morning, Jenna," I said, stepping forward. "Let's see if we can make this a little easier today." We worked together slowly, step by step. I demonstrated posture, balance, and breathing. She stumbled, cursed under her breath, then tried again. I stayed beside her, steady, offering encouragement, not pity. "You're doing better than you think," I told her. "Every fall is a lesson. Every attempt builds strength." Her shoulders relaxed slightly. "You make it sound possible." "Because it is," I said. "I know because I've been there. Every wobble, every panic, every thought that you might never stand again, I've felt it all." As the morning progressed, I watched patients regain small victories, the first steps without support, a smile after managing a set of exercises they thought impossible. Each moment reminded me of the journey I'd endured. The nights I spent staring at the ceiling, pills lined up in front of me, contemplating an escape from it all. Those memories no longer haunted me. They guided me. They reminded me that I had survived, that I had rebuilt, that I had reclaimed life from the shadow of despair. After the session, I sat in the lounge, coffee in hand, reflecting on how close I had come to giving up. 1 year ago, a single decision could have ended everything. My life, my chance to see my daughter grow, my opportunity to stand again, both physically and emotionally. I closed my eyes, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face and the hum of life around me. The betrayal, the abandonment, the pain, they hadn't broken me. They had forged me. Every step I had taken since waking in that recovery room had been towards something real. Clarity, truth, and survival. My phone buzzed again, another message from my daughter. Got some old photos. Want to show you. I smiled. These were the small moments, the incremental steps, the real treasures of life. Not the grand gestures or dramatic revenge. Just ordinary human connection. Later, at home, I laid the photos out on the table. She had included pictures from my daughter's first piano recital, birthday parties I had missed, snapshots I had never seen. We laughed over the awkward hairstyles, the clumsy attempts at cake cutting, and the silly faces she had made. I marveled at how fragile life had been, and how strong I had become. I had faced the edge and stepped back, and now every ordinary moment was extraordinary. Every conversation, every shared meal, every small triumph felt earned. By evening, I found myself sitting on the balcony, watching the city lights flicker to life. I thought of my daughter, of the patients I had helped today, of the man I used to be, the man who woke to betrayal, to paralysis, to despair. And then I smiled. Not a triumphant, Hollywood smile. Not a smile that demanded recognition or applause. Just a quiet, private one. The smile of a man who had survived, who had endured, who had chosen life when it would have been easier to let go. The betrayal that had once defined me, the divorce, the lies, the abandonment, no longer framed my existence. It had been the catalyst, the breaking point that forced me to confront my strength, my resilience, and my capacity for love and forgiveness. I had rebuilt not for vengeance, not for recognition, but for myself, for my daughter, for the life I was meant to live. I leaned back, letting the cool night air brush my face. My legs, once weak and trembling, held me upright. My hands, once shaking with fear and pain, rested steady in my lap. My mind, once clouded with doubt and anger, was clear. I closed my eyes, letting a deep, unhurried breath fill my lungs. The man who woke to betrayal, to isolation, to despair, had walked through fire. The man who nearly gave up had chosen to stand again. And the man who survived was not defined by what he had lost, but by what he had fought to regain. This wasn't a fairy tale. There were no neatly tied bows, no miraculous reconciliations that erased the past. My daughter and I were still rebuilding, our trust fragile but growing. The world still held its complications, its challenges, its unpredictability. But I was here, fully alive, fully present, fully me. The betrayal had been the beginning, not the end. And as the lights of the city sparkled beneath me, I realized it had given me something I would never have found otherwise. A life reclaimed, a mind clear, a body resilient, and a heart capable of choosing to live, no matter the pain I had endured. I took one more deep breath, feeling the quiet satisfaction of a life rebuilt. I was the man who survived.